Well, we've got a stripped thread on a drum throne. And is it worth it to repair that? And how can you repair that? Well, let's see if it's worth it. This stand or throne new is $99. How much is like a hi-hat stand? Well, that's a cheaper one for $61, and that one's just pretty typical iron Cobra, $99, $89. 95, but some of these are, my goodness, they're expensive. We got a $149. We've got $290, $269 for this two-legged job from DW. $149, $120. Yeah, they're pretty expensive. Some of these stands, they're getting up there. So the question I often get, that's a cheaper one, $36. Probably not super great, but might not be a bad little practice hi-hat. But every once in a while I will get in a hi-hat stand or a cymbal stand with stripped threading, and what happens is, you use those T-bolt screws, and over time they get dirty and they get dry and there's no more grease on them, and they'll strip out. And so it's like, well, what do we do? Well, there's a number of things you can do. You can replace the stand, buy another one for $100 or $150, or you can simply take and repair it. Now, some folks would just take and drill that out and run a tap in there, go to the hardware store and buy one of those thumb screws, and that can work. But the problem is twofold. You're usually tapping out to a larger diameter, which means the thread pitch is going to be more coarse. So like a 3/8/16 tap instead of a 5/16 18 threads per inch. And the piece of metal that you're tapping into is maybe pretty thin. So you're only getting a couple threads that actually bite in there. So then there's the risk of that whole thing stripping out again. So there's a better way to do it. And I'm going to show you how that's done. Stay tuned. We'll repair my own hardware. We've all been there. We've all done that. We have a perfectly good drum throne or cymbal stand, and the wing nut gets stripped out. And usually what happens is the wing nut is fine. It's the cast metal, pot metal, aluminum alloy, whatever you want to call it, gets stripped out, because this is usually made of a harder metal, chrome plated, and that interior it's softer. And I'm a pretty diligent person about keeping my tension rods and T-bolts lubricated with some bearing grease, because when you don't lubricate them, they will strip out more readily because they get dry, and then you crank on them and that's what causes them to strip out. So we're going to repair these threads instead of throwing the stand away. And the first thing we got to do is get the tube out of here, because that's press fit, and oftentimes a locking compound is applied. So it's a very simple process, but it requires a little bit of heat, but not too much, because you don't want to melt the aluminum. And we just heat that base up. And sometimes they come easy, sometimes they're a little more difficult. We'll give that a shot. Now I've got a piece of flat metal that will usually knock that loose. And there we go. So we have to take that out. And here's why. We are going to repair those threads, but we're not just going to over tap them with a larger tap and a larger thumb screw, because that usually doesn't work very well. We're going to use what's called a helicoil. Now, helicoils are stainless steel threads. They come as a kit, a tool that you need to buy. There's the information. You can look them up. You can get them in metric, and you can get them in American Standard threads. This one's a 5/16 18, a very common threading on American hardware, but that's becoming less and less a thing. It's usually an M8 by 125 millimeter threading. And it says here that you have to use a specific size drill. Use a 21/64 drill bit, which I keep in hand right up here, Mr. Master Mechanic. There's a 21/64. We'll drill that out. We'll install the new helicoil with the tappet for the helicoil. We'll tap it, use that tap that they supply. We'll install the helicoil threads with that installer. And then we break off the excess, and then we're good to go. So we'll find a way to set this down and show you all. So the first thing we got to do is get this plastic insert out of there, because we're going to be drilling through there and we don't want to destroy our plastic and metal insert. So that's oftentimes a little bit of a tricky thing. There's a little hole that you have to press that out, and then we drop it down. See that? And there's our metal insert. So what I do is I just pry that loose like that, and then I push that metal or plastic tab, and that just drops out. Pretty simple, straightforward. Okay, Mr. DeWalt is going to help us out with this 21/64 drill bit, which, by the way, is the same drill bit that you would use to install the American equivalent to the 8mm helicoil, which would be a 5/16. They're really similar in thread pitch and size, but they're not compatible. All right, so we go ahead. It's really not necessary to lubricate this because that's just soft metal. And sometimes you have to reverse the drill several times because it binds. You could do it on a drill press and just ram it through. There we go. That went through real easy. Okay. So I'm using my 8mm by 1.25mm, and that's interestingly 1.25mm is the thread pitch, whereas your 5/16, you have 5/16 diameter, 18 threads per inch. 8mm diameter, 1.25mm per millimeter. So it's a real similar pitch. This is our installation tool that comes with the helicoil. You can see it almost looks like a spring, but these are stainless steel. There's a tab here, and this end is open. When we install it, we're going to do it like this. First we take our tap, and then our tap handle. This kit does not come with a tap handle, so you have to get that separately. There we go, that one fits. Got several of these around. So then, once you've drilled it to the appropriate size for the tap for the helicoil, you go in there, and now this helicoil tap is not just a standard. It's designed specifically for helicoils, so it's not just a generic 5/16 18 tap or whatever. It's designed to fit to receive these threads once we're installed. So what we do is we go in here and just tap that open. Now on soft pot metal, it's not really necessary to go and then back tap to break that tab off. You can just go right through. On hard steel, you want to rotate and then break the tab, rotate, back it out to break that little tab off. We go all the way through. We're going to through tap it. We're not going to bottom tap, we're through tapping. See, it's coming through, but I want to go through that all the way so I get to the major thread pitch on the tap itself. There we go. So I wasn't on a gig, I was on a rehearsal. And all of a sudden I could feel my drum throne rocking. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, I looked down and this was bottomed out on the ground, like, I don't know, like that or something. And it was not working right. So I'm like, oh great. I'm going to be in a 3-hour rehearsal with a throne that doesn't work. So I got my old gaff tape out of my gig bag and I taped the bottom right under here so it wouldn't slip down any further. And that got me through the rehearsal. But I knew that come Monday morning I'd need to repair my own hardware. Okay, so we don't put any lubrication on it or anything. We take this, in this case it's a metric helicoil, 8mm helicoil, with that little tab facing toward, and then we install it. Now this is also we have to put a tap handle on this guy also to drive it in. So I will get the appropriate tap handle for that. Okay, so we got our tap handle. Now this turns in. So we're turning those stainless steel threads in there. And these will never fail. Now you may be thinking, well geez, I have to have a couple different size tap handles and you know, and a this and a that, and you would be right. And there gets to be a point where it's like, well, do I want to invest that time and money, or should I just send this stand in for a $25 repair? Because usually I can do these for 25 or 30 bucks, because you know I have to pay for the helicoils and that kit, and then all my time is worth something. So what you do, that little tab I showed you, I don't think you're going to see it very well. That little tab needs to be broken off. That little tab on the helicoil, it's notched. So we put it all the way in, and then we just take a needle nose plier and we just break that little tab off, because the screw's got to fit through there once you're done, right? And that goes real easy, usually. There we go, see? That's all there is, just a little... That's the tab for installation, and once it's installed, you just break that off. Okay, so that inside is flush. And that looks really nice, brand new threads. But the issue is the thickness of the wall. See how those threads are kind of sticking out, and that would be a little bit of a problem. Whoops. We don't want that to catch on anything and then unravel. So what I do is I'll go right here and I'll cut that with my Dremel tool, and that'll be a nice smooth surface for starting it. So let's do that next. And again, I just put on the safety glasses. I'll go and I'll just cut that little tab. That should do it. There they are, right in front of me. See that? I'm just going to break that thread off. Oh, there it is. Perfect. So now, here's the original T-bolt. Now once I took this out of the stripped portion, it was of course embedded with old threading, that aluminum threading, so I just took a cloth and I spun it off to remove that. And this just goes in here, and it's like new. It's better than new because these stainless steel thread inserts, they're not going to die. What's going to happen potentially is the thread of the T-bolt itself will get destroyed. Now, you can use like a bearing grease or white lithium grease on your hardware. That's what I recommend. This is an alternative to that. But anyway, I'll just go ahead and start that. But we're not done, because we have to put our insert back in, right? So let's do that. We just lay our steel insert and then our plastic down. And this just it goes in easier than it comes out. And that little plastic tab fits right in there. And that's pretty much it. Now, we want to put this guy back in. And then you can see that my threading is good to go. But now I got to re-secure this. Now there's a couple ways you can do it. From the factory, they just press fit it, and they might put a little locking compound on there, and you can do that. In fact, I'm going to just... It's not unusual for me to get, you know, hi-hat stands or cymbal stands or drum thrones where this bottom piece is always coming out. Even, you know, the factory press fit and locking compound, it just doesn't hold up. And so it's not unusual for me to drill this and drill through that tube and then install a pop rivet to keep it solid. But I think in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and mix up some JB Weld and smear on that and then press it together. This takes 24 hours to set, and it will do a good job. Alternatively, you could use Loctite, you know, the kind that, what is it, the red Loctite, I think? That's the one that requires heat or tools to remove, which if you ever have to repair it again, you already know that you need to use some heat to break that compound. But now, I think I mentioned this already, but the question probably is, you know, is it worthwhile doing all this just to repair a stand? Well, yeah, if it's a $100 stand or a $150 stand, it's definitely worthwhile. But is it worth having or buying helicoils and the tap and die set or the tool handles? You can buy those tap and die handles separately. You don't have to buy a tap and die kit. But unless you're familiar with tapping and using taps and dies, you know, it might be something that you want to defer to a professional. Now, I don't know how many guys are doing this out there in the field or in the world, but I do, and it saves a lot of school-owned hardware, because, you know, they get a lot of use and they don't get a lot of necessarily maintenance. And what I mean by that is, you know, drum hardware, it works, right? There's nothing you need to do, right? Until it breaks. Well, that's not really true, because you do need to keep it lubricated, and that will help things, okay? So we just tap this down on there hard. Okay, and that's good to go. Now I'll just take and wipe that excessive JB Weld. Again, you can use the Loctite locking compound. The thing with JB Weld is it's kind of slow. It's a slow setting compound, but it's got a tensile strength of like over 5,000 psi. Okay, so put the tap back in here. The installation tool, the remaining helicoil, and then this. Now, I guess you can order helicoils online. I got this at a hardware store up in the Twin Cities, like up in Apple Valley, Minnesota. This one I got locally in Madison, Wisconsin. But I noticed they had the metrics up in Apple Valley, and I was like, cool. Otherwise, you can. I think you can order them online. But you know, you're gonna have to buy a drill bit, which is probably gonna be $10. You're gonna have to get a tap handle, which is gonna be 10 or 15. You're gonna have to get the helicoil kit, which is probably gonna be, I can't remember what these were, maybe 20 or 25 bucks, and they come with I think a dozen helicoils. It doesn't say on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I've used a bunch out of there. Probably comes with a dozen. Now, how often do I do this? For school-owned instruments and professionals or you know, hobbyists that are coming in with a broken stand, not very often. A couple times a year I'll be doing this, you know, for various schools, various points on their hardware. So even as a full-time repairman, I'm not using it a ton, so I don't know if it's really worth buying it and doing it yourself. Having the capability is always cool, but like I say, it's probably more worthwhile sending it to somebody for 25 or 30 bucks to do it. And usually what I do is I charge 25 bucks plus $5 for parts to pay for these over time. So hit me up if you need hardware repaired, or contact your local repairman, you know, or metalworking dude, you know, at an auto shop, and they could probably do it for you, but they may not be familiar with drum hardware, and they'll be scratching their heads. Mechanically, it's not a difficult job, but if you haven't done it before, it might be kind of a little bit lost. But anyway, there we are. A nice drum throne, repaired and ready to go 100,000 more miles. See you later. Oh, check out in the description for contact information, and we'll see you again.